Xbox exclusives. In 2026, that is a bit of a controversial topic. Over the past couple of years, it seemed like Xbox was going the route of Sega, slowly turning into a third-party developer, as we saw their main franchises like Halo, Gears of War and Forza coming over to PlayStation. That was until the new Xbox CEO Asher Sharma completely went back on this decision, announcing that Gears of War E-Day would be an Xbox console exclusive. Honestly, these days exclusives are a bit weird. I mean, the fact that I can go on my Steam Deck and 1 minute be playing Halo 3 and the next Uncharted 4 is absolute insanity. A decade ago, I couldn't even imagine doing anything like that. It seems like Nintendo are the only ones that have stuck to keeping their games solely on their hardware. So today, I wanted to go back to a time when console exclusives were special, when they made a console what it was. I mean, just look at the PlayStation, Dreamcast and the GameCube. Most of the games I remember on these consoles were all exclusives. They were a way to make your console stand out in the market, which in 2001 was about to become even more competitive when Microsoft announced the Xbox as their very first home console. Microsoft knew that they had to have games that the other consoles simply couldn't have, and of course the most famous one was But today I wanted to take a look at some of the console's more obscure and forgotten exclusives, which are so exclusive the only way to play them is on native Xbox hardware. They're not backwards compatible and they're barely playable on emulators due to Xbox emulation being quite broken. So all the footage you see has been recorded on my childhood Xbox, and I've tried my absolute hardest to make the footage look the best it can, so hopefully it's watchable at least. But without further ado, let's take a look at some of Xbox's forgotten exclusives. The first game I want to talk about is a racing game that's been completely forgotten about, even after having a total of 4 releases back on the Xbox and 360. I'm of course talking about Project Gotham Racing, and I wanted to speak about the second game in the series, PGR2, as this was the one I played the most growing up. Developed by Bizarre Creations, the Project Gotham Racing series was actually a spiritual successor to one of my favourite races on the Dreamcast, Metropolitan Street Racer. A lot of the game's DNA can be seen in PGR series, and for me, the best iteration is the second one. So, let's take a look. I spent most of my time whilst revisiting this game going back through its career mode. Even though this was Xbox's answer to PlayStation's legendary Gran Turismo series, the game is a lot more simplified than that. You essentially have a ladder you have to climb of more and more powerful car classes, starting off in everyday hatchbacks and working your way up to some of the best supercars in the world. Each championship has a range of different challenges for you to beat, these ranging from your standard race events to overtaking and style challenges. The variety in event types really keep the game from getting stale and honestly make it quite addictive to play through, as I just wanted to get to the next stage and see what cars I'd be working with next. Speaking of cars, the car selection is very varied, with each class having multiple options for you to choose from, with a massive 100 cars in the base game. All the car models look great as well and haven't aged badly at all, even having detailed interiors. Playing through the career mode, you'll notice you'll have to unlock these cars using kudos points, the game's currency. You get this by levelling up. The instruction manual even has a little diagram to show you how this works. I mean, it didn't really need that, it's kind of simple actually. This isn't just from racing and doing challenges though, the game rewards you with kudos for doing things like clean racing and sliding around corners, meaning the better driver you are, the quicker you level up and unlock new cars. The game also has this cool showroom where I spent most of my time as a kid. You can take a closer look at all the cars and even test them out on the track in proper Top Gear fashion. Obviously the most important thing about the game is how it handles, and to be honest it holds up pretty well. It's a lot more arcadey than something like Gran Turismo, as the game encourages you to slide around corners, but the game is still quite challenging, especially on the harder difficulties. It's a great mix of challenge and just fun driving gameplay. I did notice though the AI were constantly trying to take me out rather than just racing, which led to a few restarts. But other than that, I enjoyed my time with it. The game has a ton of different tracks as well, across tons of different locations like Stockholm, Edinburgh, Barcelona and Miami, plus tons more. You even get to do a few races on the famous Nürburgring. Each location has its dedicated radio stations to really add to the atmosphere, but the soundtrack isn't amazing. It's licensed just about. I looked through the track list and recognised about 2 names, but the localised radio stations for each location are a nice touch. It's a shame Microsoft completely abandoned the series after Bizarre Creations was bought by Activision. Apparently, Playground Games pitched the idea of bringing the series back to Microsoft, which turned into Forza Horizon, which I think was definitely a good call by them. I highly doubt we'll ever see this series return. It was definitely a product of its time, but it's still so fun to go back to all the old games in this franchise, as they have aged surprisingly well, and its mechanics are super simple without getting too boring. and PGR2 is definitely one of my most favourite racing games on the Xbox. The next game I want to talk about is something I've never heard anyone mention, ever. I think I may be the only person who's played this game or even just remembers it. It's a game called Kung Fu Chaos, developed by Just Add Monsters, who are now known as Ninja Theory, which is a much better name. The game released in 2003, the best way to describe it is, imagine Smash Bros and Mario Party had a strange, unlicensed child, and that is pretty much what this game is. First thing I want to speak about is its art style and theme. It's set up like an old 70s Kung Fu movie set. You're one of the actors taking part in the action scenes, being told what to do by the director of the movie, Shao Ting. Yep, that's his name. Okay, some of the jokes in the game haven't aged too well, but still there's something quite charming about the game's vibe and setting that I just really enjoy. It's definitely unique, and not something I've ever seen before. I love all the little details on the stages, things like the cameramen filming looking completely uninterested, and being able to see parts of the stage in the background. It just gives this game so much character. Speaking of character, the game has a varied cast of them, all with their own borderline offensive names, like Ninja for hire, and Shui Tan Sewa. Not gonna lie, that one is actually kind of clever. Each character has their own style and moveset. There is only 8 playable characters, but this isn't really a traditional fighting game, where there's varied combos and different strategies like that. Every character has the same set of combos, but just different moves for each input. It's obviously made this way to make it a simple pick up and play experience that anyone can get the gist of. Most of my time with the game was spent playing through the story mode called Ninja Challenge. This mode sees you go through all the scenes for Shao Ting's movie with a bunch of different scenarios and settings. There's about 20 levels, with a lot of them being your standard beat 'em up setup, defeat all the enemies on screen whilst moving across the stage, which in this game's case is an ever evolving movie set which normally has a boss fight at the end of it. But there's also a few minigames thrown in for good measure as well. Like this one where you have to stay on the platform and dodge the swinging bar, or one where you have to chuck the ugly princess at other enemies and be the last one standing. With each level you have to get a minimum of 3 stars to progress, which you can do by eliminating as many enemies as possible throughout the stage, with there being a total of 5 stars to get in each level. Doing this unlocks new costumes and characters for you to play around with in the other modes. To be honest, there's a lot locked behind the different levels and stars, giving the game so much more replay value. Like I said, certain extra modes and characters are completely unplayable until you reach these certain specifications, which I think we can all agree is the only way things in games should be unlocked. After playing most stages and modes, even though there's a lot of variety, I do feel like the game would be so much better in multiplayer. It's definitely built with that in mind. But still, it's enjoyable in single player, but it does feel like something's missing experiencing it in this way. Kung Fu Chaos is one of Xbox's most unique games. I've never played anything like it. Looking back, it is a bit bare bones, and I can kind of see why it never became a success, or got a sequel. But playing it now is quite a fun little game with a lot of variety in terms of its stages and game modes. I'm not surprised it never got a sequel or a re-release, but if you have an original Xbox and want something that's completely different to anything else on the console, then I can't recommend it enough. When I first got my Xbox during Christmas 2003, the first memory that pops into my head is of course playing Halo, but another game I absolutely loved was MIDTOWN Madness 3. The MIDTOWN Madness series started life as a PC game developed by Angel Studios, who would be renamed to Rockstar San Diego and create the legendary Midnight Club series. The third game, however, would not be developed by them and instead be developed by DICE exclusively for the Xbox in June of 2003. So what is MIDTOWN Madness? Well, it's not really a racing game. Yeah, it has some sort of racing elements to it, but I'd say it's similar to a game like Crazy Taxi. The gameplay is definitely arcadey, with you being able to fly around corners at full speed with no need for the brake, and being able to smash through everything in your way. The main part of the game is set up into 2 different campaigns, one set in Paris with the other set in Washington DC. In these campaigns you'll start in a taxi or a small-time delivery driver, working your way up different vehicle-related jobs, working undercover. It's a fun and challenging campaign mode, and you can see a lot of what would have influenced Angel Studios' Midnight Club in this series. I spent most of my time doing the Paris campaign, as both of them are quite similar. Each mission is based around you getting to locations as quick as possible, sometimes against the clock and sometimes against AI opponents. There's nothing too crazy, and after you've played one mission, you've really played them all, but that's not to say the game is boring. Not at all. Thanks to its really fun arcade gameplay and well thought out maps, MIDTOWN Madness 3 ends up being such a unique experience on the Xbox. The game has a few licensed cars mixed in with a few made up ones, meaning you get quite a varied amount of vehicles to play around with. It means one minute you could be driving an Audi TT, then switch it up to a bus, then to something like a Koenigsegg, then over to an ambulance. You really don't get this in anything other than GTA. The maps themselves are really detailed and give off completely different vibes, as they should. The game at the time really showed off the power of the Xbox. Washington at night just looks outstanding, and I'm sure at the time it truly felt like a next-gen experience. For me, Paris just had a bit more going for it. Being able to do things like drive on the metro line with fully working trams was a lot of fun, but still both maps are fun to play around in, and even in cruise mode you get to change the weather and time of day, so you have even more variety. Even the NPCs are quite detailed, with some of them actually carrying brand new Xboxes around, which I always thought was quite a cool detail. There's also collectibles to find around each city, most of these being exclusive paint jobs for the vast amount of vehicles, giving you more reason to explore these great locations. MIDTOWN Madness 3 offers something completely different to any other driving game. It's fun, it's arcadey, and it's a shame it's no longer around. After this game's release, there was absolutely nothing from the franchise. Obviously the original developers, Angel Studios, would be renamed to Rockstar San Diego and work on their newer franchises, and DICE, well, I'm not too sure. They probably just worked on some shooter or something, or maybe made a new engine, I don't know. And I think Microsoft have completely forgotten its existence, so just like Project Gotham Racing, I don't think this series will ever see the light of day, ever again. It's time to talk about the final game, and what a game to end on. Of course, we're talking about
Jet Set Radio!
Future. It's a long forgotten sequel that has never been re-released, and has just been rotting away on the LG Xbox since 2002. Before I start talking about this game though, I need to first talk about its predecessor, the original Jet Set Radio, which released on the Dreamcast in 2000. Obviously this is a game developed by Sega and was a first party exclusive, but after Sega left the hardware business, they started bringing their games to other consoles, and that of course includes this series, which was bundled with Sega GT 2002, which is also a really great game. Even though the original has been ported to everything, including the goddamn PS Vita, sadly there has never been a re-release of its sequel, or prequel, or reboot. To be honest, no one's really sure what this game is. I think it's like a reboot of the original game, but anyway, with all that out of the way, let's take a look at Jet Set Radio Future. First of all, what actually is this game? Well, it's a roller skating / graffiti platformer with a whole lot of character. Imagine Tony Hawk mixed with a platformer, and that's basically what it is. It's set in a futuristic version of Tokyo, in the way distant future of 2024. That's a bit depressing. Anyway, you play as one of the members of roller skating graffiti enthusiasts, known as the GGs, taking on a corrupt police group and rival graffiti artists and rollerblade gangs to save Tokyo from corruption. I think, anyway, that sounds about right. This guy was trying to explain it, but I was getting motion sickness from watching his head moving around so much. The game has a little hub world where you can practice your sick moves and also change character, and also create your own graffiti to leave all across the world, which back in the day my dad was really good at making great graffiti in this game. That is until I replaced it with stuff like this. Could you tell maybe I was a little bit obsessed with wrestling? Obviously the main thing the game is remembered for is its great use of cel shaded graphics. Couple that with a great art style, you have easily one of the most unique and best looking games of the 6th generation. And of course, it hasn't aged a day and still looks great as ever, playing it 24 years later. Honestly, this footage doesn't do it any justice. Trust me, it looks outstanding. Just like the visuals, the soundtrack is absolutely perfect as well. You know a soundtrack's good when you still remember how certain songs sound when you haven't even played the game in well over 15 years. Honestly, this is the main reason to come back to this series. It's just the whole vibe is perfect. Gameplay wise, it's fun. Like I said before, it's kind of half extreme sports, half platformer. You won't be pulling off any crazy combos, the tricks are very bare bones, but the level design is really fun and quite varied, meaning you'll have fun tagging it all up and just exploring it with that great soundtrack in the background. The first game had a time limit which has been taken out this time round, giving you more time to explore and just enjoy what the game has to offer. Each location has its own set of objectives, obviously the main part of each one being to tag it up, but to stop the game from going stale you'll have other things to do, like take out the police and their turrets, or race against other skaters across the map to recruit them to your gang. Jet Set Radio Future never gets stale, it's fun throughout and honestly still plays incredibly well. And best of all, the controls are super easy to pick up and play, so no crazy combos or lines to remember, just drop in and have fun. I miss Jet Set Radio Future. It's such a fun game that never took itself too seriously, and thankfully, a few years ago, Sega announced they'd be bringing some of their classic franchises back, and that includes Jet Set Radio. It looks like they're starting with Crazy Taxi, but for the love of God, I really hope they don't make this game look like Fortnite like they have with that reboot. I just hope it has its original art style and similar sounding soundtrack, and it will honestly be a day one purchase. Bundle it with the original games and then it'll easily be my game of the year. Luckily, if you can't wait for the reboot though, a developer by the name of Team Reptile have made Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, heavily inspired by the series, and have also recently announced Hyperfunk, which looks incredible. I don't think I've ever seen a game influence a developer as much as this, and I think that just shows how special Jet Set Radio truly was. So there we have it, some of Xbox's forgotten exclusive. I think these games really showed a time when having the vast library of first party titles that players couldn't get anywhere else was so important to selling consoles, and the more unique experiences, the better. It had developers thinking outside the box, and I know Jet Set Radio is a bit of an outlier in this video, but that game started life as a console exclusive for the Dreamcast, so my point still stands. Today most companies play it safe, with their exclusives sticking to already established franchises and genres. That seemed like a safe bet. Even Nintendo really only stick to what they know. It's sad because I just don't think we'll ever get that fierce competition we got when it came to console exclusives like we did back in the day, with each company trying to make the next big thing to sell consoles. Instead, it just seems like everyone is happy just dropping sequels to about 3 or 4 franchises every few years. And well, I don't really have a point, to be honest. I just really wanted to play Jet Set Radio Future. Anyway, that's it from me today. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you when I see you.